Hi there. Well, it's obviously a tedious Friday because I'm making increasingly bizarre videos. And this one is comparing these three different DAB clock radios. Here we have a Maxtek, here we have a Sony, and here we have a Sandstrøm. For anyone who's interested in model numbers, I'll just show you them here now. But really, probably all of these are obsolete now. None of them are current models, I doubt. But it would be useful maybe just to look at some of the differences in features between the different models. So this is the Maxtek, which you can see is by far the bulkiest of the designs. I think I got this second hand in a charity shop. I just wanted an extra DAB radio to go in the spare room. It also has the least aesthetically pleasing display. It's black text on a light background, which gives the most sort of stray light at night. You can see it defaults to turning on into radio mode. I've got the volume turned down at the moment. Turn it on. These knobs are quite slippery to turn actually. The tuning one is like a digital encoder knob, and you can press it to make your selection. If you want to turn it onto standby, you press the standby button and then it should just come up with the clock. The menu systems are quite bizarre on this. I had to download the manual to work out how to do anything really. Nothing works with it in standby, setting the alarm or whatever. You have to actually have the radio on to get into those modes. The info menu cycles around the different options, display options for the radio. If I could get a channel tuned in. If I press and hold the info menu button, it goes into a menu system which you can control using the... No, if you turn the knob you drop out of the menu system. This is why I had to have the manual. Yeah, here's things for setting the clock and so forth. So it's quite difficult to use, I would say. Also, if you turn the volume control right off, it's got a detented off position, which turns the whole thing completely off. Then if you turn it on again, it's lost the clock until it resyncs up to the DAB. So quite a lot of downsides to this. On the upside, it is the only one of the three models that's got a proper telescopic antennae. The others have just got bits of wire. It's the only one of the three models that could run on batteries. It uses quite a lot of AAs, 6 AAs. I've never actually tried it on batteries, but there you go, it will run on batteries. And it's one of only two of the models which have got a headphone jack. And I think all the two models that have got the headphone jacks do actually have a stereo output. So there you go, difficult to use, some unique features. It has 8 presets on the radio, 8 on DAB and 8 on FM. You press the 4+ to get the higher 4 presets. So, and it's probably the one I've used least, which is why I don't know how to operate it. Secondly, we've got the Sony one. Quite a nice large clear display here. Quickly syncs up to the DAB without having to go into any menus. Like if you noticed on the Maxtek, it was just flashing 00 all the time. Don't know if it's, yeah, it's still not picked up a time. Quite nice aesthetically. It's probably the one with the least features, so it doesn't have a headphone jack. Only has a mono speaker. And the other thing I don't like is the power supply. They've all got these plug-top power supplies. It's hardwired into the device. It's not on a socket at all. And here's the horrible wire aerial. That's the display at its maximum brightness, which is the default. As you can see, it's quite nice and clear. that will dim down in 3 stages if you press and hold the display button. That's brightness 1, that's brightness 2. It's quite easy to operate. There is a slight inconsistency in the menus, but that's all. So it's got a big menu system which you access by pressing menu. Comes along those bottom 2 lines of the screen. And then it's got these arrows to indicate you can use the arrow keys to cycle through things. Then some features are accessible directly with buttons like sleep, alarm, etc. They're also in the main menu, but there's just a quick way of getting to them. So for example, pressing alarm gets me into the alarm menu, which at the top level will show you the status of the 4 alarms. You can cycle around them. Oh yes, this is one thing that's happened to this radio, this device, is the buttons that seem to have a lot of bouncing on the contacts now. So often it will skip things and you have to go around again, which is slightly annoying. If you press enter when you've got one of these flashing alarms, it then goes into the whole menu for setting the alarm, which I won't go into now. So you've got 4 independent alarms on this device, whereas the Maxtek only had 2. And I think the Sandstrøm only has 2 as well. The menus have got a slight confusion on them in those arrows that come up at each end of the display to indicate you can scroll through things. Or some of the menus don't work like that, but they still have the arrows. So for example, the sleep menu. Oh, yes, I think I have to have the radio on before I can do sleep. If I press the sleep menu, it has those arrows, but the arrow keys don't do anything. I have to press sleep again to toggle around the menu, so that's rather inconsistent. Yeah, so I think that's about all I've got to say about that. Is nice display, nice looking unit. Oh yes, and it's the only one that has DAB plus out of the 3. I didn't mention that either. Some problems with button debouncing. Probably the most logical menu system though. So that's that one. So thirdly, onto the Sandstrøm, which I sometimes called Sandstrøm, so sorry if I do that. So it sounds like some really upmarket Norwegian brand or something, but it's actually Curry's own. I think it has the nicest display out of all 3. So it's white on black again, which I like, but you can see it's a bit bigger and clearer than the Sony is. It also has a headphone jack and a detachable power supply. The speaker's in the back. It has a wire aerial which is all poked inside the machine because it doesn't seem to make it any better or worse reception. I think it extended out. In fact, all of them seem to get pretty good reception on DAB here in the city, so that's fine. Now this unusually has nearly everything controlled by 3 rotary encoder knobs, which also have a push in to select function. Plus you have a snooze dimmer button on top, so you can press it and it toggles between 2 different levels of brightness, which are almost the same. Also, it's developed this weird bug from when it was fairly new, where pressing snooze dimmer often randomly turns the radio on. Now these rotary knobs are a bit of a nightmare to use because they're not at all logical. Like the Maxtek, to be able to do anything in the menus, you have to have the radio on. So we press the middle button in to change toggle from standby to having the radio on. So once you've got the radio on, you can go into the menu by pressing the menu button and then using the bottom knob, rotating it to go around the different options in the menu. And you can see some of them are a bit weirdly named. Like we've got one here called Prune, which is to do with deleting stations. Now why someone decided to name it Prune, it sounds like some sort of bad translation. And then you press in the bottom knob to select something. Now I find that what you naturally do when you're trying to use this device is to press the menu button and then turn the menu button to go around the menus, which just gets you into this, which drops you out of the menus and into this mode where you're selecting FM or DAB, which you then confirm by pressing menu again. The other feature they forgot to include on this, and it makes a big meal of it in the manual, is when you're listening to the radio, there is no way to display the station you're on. So if I select a different channel, so I'll select radio 2, and then I'll select radio 4 again, you can see then it goes into a mode where it has scrolling text. Now if you go into the menus, you can select what display you have here. You go into display, you can have scrolling text, signal strength, program type, ensemble, frequency, signal quality, date, scrolling text, but you can't have the station name. So if you're listening to a station, the only way to find out what station you're listening to is to turn the tuning button once, and the first time you turn it, it will come up with the station name. Now isn't that bizarre, and someone made a right mess when they were writing the software. Well, I hope you like that quick look at 3 DAB radios, and it helps you to know what to look out for when you're buying a model. So just to run through, you might look at its general aesthetics, how clear the display is, and how much light it sheds at night, how dimmable it is. I mean, the Sony really does go nice and dim at night. I mean, you think you can hardly see that now, but it's more than adequate in the middle of the night. Whereas this one, you've got the backlight, and this one you've got hardly any difference between light and dark. How easy it is to work the functions. So the Maxtek menus are quite confusing, because you have to either press a button or press and hold it to get into a menu. The Sony, quite nice logical buttons, lots of shortcut buttons to get straight to things, but the only slight inconsistency is those arrows on the menu make you think as though you always should be using the left and right, whereas sometimes you shouldn't. And then the Sandstrøm, you can get to know your way around it, but the use of the 3 rotary encoders really isn't very obvious. And then you might be after a specific feature, like whether it's got a headphone jack, which 2 of them do, the Maxtek and the Sandstrøm. Sony doesn't. Whether it run on batteries, which only the Maxtek will do. Whether it's got a nice retractable aerial, which only the Maxtek has. Although, as I said, they all seem to work pretty well, even with the aerial tucked right in on the Sandstrøm. Thanks for watching.